My name is Jerome Ferry. My cameraman is Alan Eggers. We're doing a video interview with Carl Henrici, an early Collins radio employee. Carl, tell us when you were born and where you were born.
I was born in September 1915 in Minneapolis. Went to high school there, and my father was a professor at the university, so I went to University High School. And after that, he was quite an influence on my life. He was interested in shortwave radio. In fact, he even built crystal sets and roused my interest in radio at an early age. He even bought a Hammerland HQ something or other to listen to foreign radio broadcasts. That really whetted my appetite, and that's where I was able to get acquainted with ham radio, amateur radio. So I was influenced by him quite a bit in the radio business.
Growing up in Minnesota, did you, you have a lot of lakes up there. Were you interested in fishing, or did your dad take you fishing?
Yeah, we had a summer cottage at Lake Alexander near Little Falls, and we'd spend every summer up there. Being a professor, he had a lot of time off, and the family spent the whole summer up there. And fishing wasn't all that great, but it was a good life.
Good life. And you got to spend an awful lot of quality time with your dad.
Oh, yes.
With him having the summers off.
Yeah.
Like did you have brothers and sisters? 2
sisters younger than I am. Back at the lake, I was into ham radio in high school, and I had a friend in Minneapolis that was a ham. I didn't have my license then, but once a week he would send information to me on shortwave, on ham radio, while we were up at the cabin. That was really got me going on ham radio.
When you were a young kid, did your dad teach you how to build a crystal set, or did you build one on your own?
He showed me. One of my Christmas presents was, as a youngster, he gave me a kit. He made up the kit of a drawing board, a roll of bell wire, batteries, switches, and a bell and a ringer, push buttons, and let me have at it. So I had fun building things like that.
When you had a crystal set, did you find yourself staying up half the night trying to pick up stations?
Yeah, I took it to bed with me. There are no batteries, and so it would run all night, and I would listen to WCCO going to sleep with the headphones on.
You remember how many different stations you could get?
Oh, I could get all the local broadcast stations. That was fun. Yeah, we built wrapped wire around an oatmeal box and run the slider back and forth.
Then did you progress into making ham radio, crude ham radios?
I tried a little, and I built a super regenerative receiver, but there was another ham up there, W9DGH, that was in the business, if you will, of building ham radio equipment, and they were breadboards. There weren't anything fancy, but I was fortunate enough to be able to buy one of his transmitters along with my own super regenerative receiver. I was active with that for quite a while.
Yeah. Did you, were you aware of the transmissions between Art Collins and the Bird Expedition at that time?
I think I had heard of them, but it wasn't outstanding.
Yeah. Nothing that stuck in your mind?
No.
At what age did you get a ham operator's license?
Well, I got that, in 1932, I was 17.
17?
Yeah.
Did you have to take a stringent written test?
Oh, we took a written test and a code test, and I studied quite a bit for that, and I'm fortunate and passed it.
And then, were you in a financial position, or your dad, that he could buy you, or you could purchase enough ham gear so you could communicate?
Oh yeah, you bet. One of the things in ham radio, of course, was QST magazine, ARL, and the Collins always had an ad on the inside cover of that, and they were something to be desired. The quality of their work was, well, they were the Cadillac of the industry, and everybody wanted a piece of Collins equipment.
Show that, Carl. That is.
Yeah, this is currently the QST.
What did QST stand for?
That's part of a code of Q signals. There are 3 letters, all starting with Q, and this is just one that is an announcement, if you will.
How long did you belong to, how long have you belonged to this? I know you still belong.
Since 1932.
1932?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah. So, you did hear about Collins Radio. You seen their ads. Did you say where you were graduated? Did you go to college in Minnesota?
Yeah. I went to University High School there, and then went to the University of Minnesota. Took electrical engineering. Graduated there in 37. Excuse me.
At that time when you graduated, did you have any idea maybe where you wanted to go to work?
Oh, you bet. There's only one place, that's Collins Radio. Well, I take that back. The key job was in Bell Labs at that time, and they came out and interviewed, and they only made an offer to one person. I was the second one, and I didn't get the offer. So I did apply at Collins and got a nice letter from Morgan Kraft saying there's nothing available at the present time, but we'll keep your name on file. I said, okay, it's one of those things. So I got a job with Pillsbury Engineering Company in the power end of the electrical business. I was a project engineer on rural electrification systems. And so in the summer times I'd be working out in the field. The winter times they had worked for me as a draftsman. And about 1940 I got married, and we were on assignment up in Grand Rapids, Minnesota on this REA work. And I was only on that job up there from, well, I got married in June, and in October, I guess, well, no, in September, I got peritonitis, appendix problems, and I couldn't work anymore, and things were looking rather bleak. But I pulled through, and in the mail was a letter, surprisingly, from Morgan Kraft saying, we have your name on file. If you're still interested in us, why, we may have an opportunity for you in our test department. Boy, I tell you, we packed everything we owned in the back seat of the car and came down to Cedar Rapids and interviewed Morgan, and he spent the whole day with us, and I interviewed a lot of people in the company, and at the close of the day he said, well, we've decided to make an offer to you, he told me, and said, how soon can you come to work? And I said, how about tomorrow?
You didn't hold out for more money.
Oh, no way. And that was on a Thursday, and I said, I don't want to come to work tomorrow. He said, why don't you take the weekend and look for a place to live? So we looked around town and moved into the Sadie apartments on First Avenue around 8th Street. Yeah. Sadie stands for Austin and Sadie Palmer. Palmer, the penmanship business. Anyhow, we rented an apartment there and started our life with Collins.
That apartment complex is still there today.
It still is.
Yeah, it's sitting next to the Masonic Library.
Yeah, right.
I just seen it. I just drove by it the other day, and it's still a fairly nice looking building.
Well, it's really nice that Sadie had the whole top floor, and she was interested in us, took pity on us, and we didn't have much. She gave us our kitchen table, and we got along fine. She had an elevator on the outside that goes up to her floor, and she invited us up there once, but it was filled with old vases and urns. They did a lot of traveling and real thick carpet. It was quite lush.
When you were interviewed by Morgan Kraft, what building would that have been main plant?
No, that was in what turned out to be the Salvation Army
on First Avenue.
On First Avenue, that's now torn down. And the factory was in a separate building behind that.
Did he give you a tour of the?
Oh yes, yeah. It was exciting.
And how many employees do you suppose was working at Collins at that time?
There were about 265 at that time. Yeah. Our dad, as you know, the company grew up from his basement and so on. But when he really got serious, when he was on First Avenue, he decided the clock numbers would be from the factory standpoint, from 1 to 1,000, and 1 to 900, and the office people would be from 900 up to 1,000. And my clock number was 954.
You
So
remember your clock?
I was the 54th one in the office.
Hired in the office.
Offices consisted of the secretaries and the engineers and draftsmen and like that, administrative cost people.
When you first started, what type of radios would have been being produced in the factory? Do you remember?
Yeah, there was Autotune is the big thing at that time, and the aircraft industry was Boeing. Braniff, was one of our biggest customers. They bought the 17H, which was a 10-channel Autotune HF transmitter, and that was airborne. They could preset to any 10 channels and press buttons and get to change frequency to preset values very quickly. That was one of the main lines. Of course, there was amateur radio, and I got interested in the VHF end of it. Got assigned to a project to develop a VHF transceiver for the aircraft industry that was covered the 100 to 150 megacycle range. And then the war came along, and everything turned into a war effort, Navy work. And at that time, my interest in VHF raised the opportunity to bid on a combination VHF-UHF transceiver for the Navy. And fortunately, we won the development contract. What this transceiver was aimed to do was to cover both the existing VHF band and the forthcoming UHF band of 225 to 400 megacycles, cover the whole spectrum of 100 to 400 megacycles. And it was an airborne unit with, at that time we had gotten into, not Autotune, but auto positioner, which was a simplified 10-channel unit. And we worked on the development. Was really, well, in order to get there, we had to have the tube designed for that frequency. And Maclet came out and looked at it and gave us, we worked together with them on the development of a vacuum tube for the transmitter that would cover the range.
Would there have been any secret projects? Any projects noticed way back then?
Yeah, the DAB was a directional finding HF receiver, and it was housed in a wooden building behind main plant, and Walt Workler was in charge of that. What it was they could, when it was declassified, we all got to look at it, but what it did was you'd sit in a chair and there was a receiver in front of you with arms that went out to two loop antennas and a hand grip so that you could swing and rotate the antennas to any direction. And it was very accurate and was used in tracking Japanese stations during the war.
When you first come to your first day at work, I'm sure they didn't set you down and ask you to design something. What was your first job?
In the test department. The philosophy at that time was to have new electrical engineers spend about 6 months in the test department. New mechanical engineers spent about 6 months in the model shop. Then we were moved into design work. But that gave engineers a good foundation in what the products were, what was expected of quality, and what would be expected of them when they started designing.
I often thought they made a mistake when they discontinued doing that. I thought that was a great way to introduce a new employee, especially a new engineer.
Yeah. That was a good move.
Yes. During the war, evidently the war broke out shortly after you started in 1940, and the war broke out in 41. Did Collins Radio notice right away any increase in their business?
Oh yeah, they were negotiating. There was some existing contracts with the Navy, and when the war broke out, there was extreme interest, and we made, I didn't personally, but the company worked with the Navy, and we were awarded, I think it was 5 major contracts, and during the war we built 5, I can't remember them all, but there was the airborne ART-13, which was a takeoff from the 17H that we built for Braniff, and there were HF transmitters of high power, 3 or 4 of the different types of them. And later on we got into airborne navigation, but that was minimal during the war. But during the war there were thousands of these in 5 product lines that we were building for the Navy.
Was the main plant complex, was that started when you started working?
Yeah, it was, and we moved from the First Avenue location into the what's now main plant before the war, and I believe that was before the war, yeah. And they had plans for expansion from the original location, so there was a parking lot half a building away from getting in, and every time it would rain it was muddy and it was a struggle to get to work, really. And then the first edition was built east of the main plant. The 3rd edition was across the back of the 2 of them, and got into Butler buildings and the cafeteria building.
So after the war broke out, I imagine it went into a overtime mode, and
oh yeah.
heavy recruitment and hiring and.
Yeah, it was, actually, we started out with a 60-hour week, 6 days, 10 hours a day. And as that went on, they found out that we should really be working 54-hour week and get the same output. So we backed off to 54-hour, 6 days a week, 9 hours a day. And we rested on Sunday, and believe me, we rested.
I can imagine shortly after the war started, about all you seen in the factory were women.
Yeah.
The biggest percentage were women.
All the housewives really came to the war effort, and expansion was beyond the building we were in. They rented buildings all over town, took over the Piggly Wiggly store on First Avenue, and the Cherry Building, and we were into the Third Street building above the gas company, and many buildings around town for assembly. It posed a little logistics problem in driving parts to assembly location and having them bring the assembly back to the main plant to put them together. But the women did a terrific job during the war.
Did they ever receive any awards from the government for the fine product or work they did?
The Navy awarded the E for Excellence Award, and that was quite a day. They met the northeast corner of the building outside, built bleachers, and in one of his rare appearances, Art Collins did talk to the crowd, and the admirals presented him with the flag, which flew on the flagpole out there, and later on the employees got a little lapel pin that said E on it for E for Excellence, and a personal letter from Art Collins thanking us.
That would have been a very prestigious award for a manufacturer.
Oh yes, it was. It wasn't given to everybody. No, it wasn't.
I know, everything wasn't work. Did you have any social clubs? Do you remember any social clubs that existed at that time you belonged to?
Only our local bridge clubs and small groups of people.
You mentioned in our prior interview of picnics. You did go on once in a while. Collins employees. Do you recall that? You had mentioned.
I remember.
You mentioned the Palisades Park.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, CRTA, Collins Radio Technical Association, was a 4 engineers, and had technical speeches. And in the summertime, we would have a picnic at Palisades State Park.
After you made your transition from a test tech into engineering, did they put you with another engineer, or they give you a small job they wanted you?
No, there were a group of 3 or 4 of us, Merle Hubbard and Jack Heffelfinger, and I worked on this VHF, UHF equipment.
And did you stay with that type of equipment for?
Yeah, through the war. Fortunately, the war ended before we got to production.
Oh, really?
So we did have prototypes built, and there were test flights made, and we passed okay with flying colors, but the need didn't occur.
But after the war was over, did they proceed to manufacture the product you had designed, or
no?
Did the need go away?
The need went away.
Then what was your next major project that you worked on?
It was on VHF with the CAA at that time, the FAA now, building a transmitter for a localizer at the airport's ground station equipment. It was in the VHF range.
Was that large equipment?
Yeah, it was a 2-bay transmitter.
Yes. Did your wife ever work at Collins?
No, she didn't.
She never chose
She
to.
was very active with the Red Cross and was a volunteer for them. Worked as hard as I did with the Red Cross.
Yeah, didn't the engineers have a club? Yeah, I think it still exists today that they all belong to the IR.
Oh, that's national. It used to be the Institute of Radio Engineers, IRE. Now it's the IEEE, Institute of Electric and Electronic Engineers. Yes.
When did you first have the opportunity to meet Mr. Collins?
He came around in 1941, about 6 months after I was working. He knew everybody by first name.
Did he introduce himself and
Oh yeah, he knew everybody.
want to know how you were getting along and what you were working on?
Mm-hmm.
Was he a sociable, sort of chap?
He was shy, I think, in my opinion, but very genuine. People had trouble understanding him. There was a communication problem. He'd say something to them and they'd have trouble interpreting what he wanted.
He never got into trivial stuff. He was strictly business or electronic business.
Yeah. My wife got acquainted with his wife Peg at that time, and we got to know them on a personal basis. Go over and play bridge together, and he was a good bridge player. Boy.
Would he have been much older than you were at the time?
He was born in 999, September 9th, 1909.
So he was what, about 6 years
Yeah.
older. But you still found enough in common that you,
Oh,
you
yeah.
played bridge and
Sure.
you socialized together and that.
Yeah. His parents, my wife got to know them, M.H. Merle and
Collins.
Faith, Merle and Faith Collins. In fact, Jill got interested in gardening, and Faith gave her some hollyhock bulbs, and so we grew some hollyhocks from the Collins family.
Could you say your wife may have helped you out a little bit as far as being a little closer to Art Collins and his family than a lot of people would have been?
I hope not.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing wrong with that because if you had a liking for each other
Yeah.
and you like to be with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Was he a fun sort? Could he be a fun sort of person?
Oh yeah, he was good to be around. My wife, in the early get acquainted phase with his wife at that time was Peggy, Peg Collins, and Peg invited Jill and Morgan Kraft's wife over for a bridge one afternoon, and Jill thought she was on top of the world. Boy, she had it made. And Peg didn't say who the fourth person was. When they got there, turned out the fourth bridge person was Peg's cleaning lady. And that just was to get an idea that she was so much of a common person rather than try to put on airs that she could have done, and made everybody feel easy.
That is a great story. His wife Peg, I don't recall what she passed away. Did she have cancer? Or?
No, it was an aorta in the brain.
Aneurysm?
Aneurysm. Yeah.
Some of the other gentlemen you knew, Dr. Lippisch, that may have been later on in your life.
That was in the 1955 to 57 period. At that time I had worked my way up to administrative director of R&D, and Lippich's work was Art wanted some buffer between him and Lippich, and so they put that under me at that time. At that time, I had responsibilities for drafting and all the the model shop and cost, wage and salary control, and cost bidding, cost estimates for engineering.
Mm-hmm. Another name, some of the names that come to mind was a Slim Day Hawk.
Yeah. Slim ran the factory. He was quite a guy. He started with the Collins Farms. The MH had a farm work, and Slim took care of their tractors. And when son Arthur started building up, why Slim went to that effort. He got to be running the fab shop.
He probably thought he had a lot of mechanical knowledge, and he probably did.
He did, yeah. He was a little bit of a character, but he knew what.
And Art Wolfsburg?
He was the program manager on the Apollo, the space program on the Apollo work.
We'll get back a little bit later, because I know you'll want to talk about. And Warren Claypool?
Mm-hmm. Warren was one of the key engineers on the Apollo program, and we became fast friends. In fact, I had lunch with him yesterday.
Really? Did you, Roger Conrad?
Yeah, Roger and I shared an office way back during the war, before the war, and he left the company after the war, but came back to Collins, and he's another old timer that is in our. We have a lunch group that meets twice a week. It rotates at different restaurants. We call ourselves the Romeos. That stands for Retired Old Men Eating Out. And
Very
that
good.
group includes Roger and Warren Clayfoot.
John Nyquist?
No, he's not in that group.
He's not in the group.
I see John once a week, anyhow.
Okay. Okay, so you, somehow we got to get you to Dallas, Texas. Did you get another promotion to?
Yeah, the opportunity came when the company expanded, had an operation in Burbank and in Dallas and Cedar Rapids. There was an opportunity, so I took a promotion, if you will, to be director of manufacturing down in Dallas.
What year was this?
1957.
1957.
And we spent 5 years in Dallas, but I lasted in manufacturing a couple of years. Then Art wanted to get into the systems business and set up the Alpha Corporation, which was a totally owned subsidiary. And I moved over into Alpha Corporation in system engineering at that time.
Were you comfortable in manufacturing?
Yeah, I thought there was some magic to it, but I learned pretty quick there wasn't. It was just common sense and hard work.
Yes, hard work. So when and where would you have been when you first started working with the Apollo space program?
I was down in Dallas.
You were in Dallas?
With Alpha Corporation. And the Apollo, well, the company up here was in the Gemini first, Mercury. And when they won the Apollo award, why they needed help, and so I came up and became assistant program manager.
You come back to Cedar Rapids at that time to work on the Apollo?
1962.
62. Tell us a little bit about the Apollo program.
It was big. And NASA's policy was to have major contractors subcontract 50% of their work, and it spread the work around the country. It was a good policy. So part of my responsibilities as assistant program manager was to manage our 4 subcontractors. We wrote out specs and for the equipment we needed, and took bids and awarded contracts, and then monitored their progress all the way through the program. That was an important, I forget the numbers, but I think there was about $180 million worth of Apollo, and the subcontract work was $87 million. I remember that.
How many hours did you find yourself working in the heat of the Apollo program?
Probably 50, 60 hours a week. Everybody was rolled up their sleeves. Terrific cooperation around everybody. Someone had a problem, they'd all roll up their sleeves and help him solve it. I mean, that was terrific.
Did you ever think back about that? Do you think that feat could be accomplished again in this day and age?
Yeah, I think so. The company's changed a lot, but I'd hope so.
The dedication
Yeah,
that the employees paid to the program.
I would hope so.
I think, in my experience, I think some of the employees probably seen more, for a 3 or 4 year period, seen more of their fellow employees than they did of their families. And,
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that.
Did you have, by chance, have the opportunity to meet any of the astronauts, young astronauts at that time?
Just one. His name's Smith, I think. The astronauts would tour the facilities, and good public relations for NASA. And I was able to take one astronaut out to lunch one time, and he was very, very friendly, very knowledgeable. I was impressed with him when he toured our factory and saw how the stringent requirements of soldering things were together, and amazed at how they were built, and the fact that if an assembly operator dropped the box on an assembly on the floor, it was discarded. I mean, the reliability was paramount, and we took great steps to achieve that.
And I don't know if you remember it, but in being in manufacturing myself, every operation that took place, every soldering, every part put in, the part number, the identification of it, or the replacement of it, it all had to be documented.
That's right, the reliability, accountability for it. I forget they had a name for that.
If you had when the product finally reached the ship table, it could have a pack of paper that high accompanying it.
Almost outweighs the equipment.
Yeah.
Right.
Art Wolfsburg, he was closely involved with the
He
space
was
program.
program manager when I came up.
Did you get to work with Art?
Oh yeah, I was assistant program manager, assistant to him.
Yeah. Did you ever get the opportunity to go to Cape Canaveral or Cape Kennedy now?
Not on the program, as a tourist I did.
Yeah. Okay. What was your feeling when there was numerous shots, but any of them were you very, very nervous about? Or were you nervous about all of them?
We were concerned about all of them. One of the pieces of equipment we had was called a data storage equipment, DSE. What it was a tape recorder with several channels and a 1-inch wide tape. And its purpose in life was when the module got behind the moon and out of contact with the Earth, it would record all the data the wings needed. And when it got on the near side of the moon, it would spill out and transmit that data back. And we had a heck of a time with that during the qual tests, or the mechanical things would have to meet stringent requirements of hot and cold and vibration. And we passed that, but we were nervous about it. So the first moonshot that the module went behind the moon, we just held our breath until it came on the back to the near side and then spilled out the data and helped everybody. Heaved a sigh of relief, because that was one of the equipments we were really curious and concerned about.
Were you all together kind of as a group when they would have these major shots? And
No, that was done over the television, Walter Cronkite.
okay, but the moon landing, 1969.
Yeah, that was again Walter Cronkite, and we of course had a group of our friends over, watched open-eyed, open-mouthed.
What were, other than the Apollo project, I know it was a very major project in your career at Rockwell. What are some of the other major ones that you enjoyed working on that you can
Well,
recall?
after Apollo was development, and then competitive development, and later production of the TACAN, which was airborne or government navigation aid, and we worked hard on competitive development. The other competitor was General Dynamics out in California, and we won the award, and then negotiated a production contract that went on and had very successful. A unique feature of the program was that it had a reliability improvement requirement, warranty, and we warrant every piece of equipment for meeting a reliability $10,000 life cycle, and when the equipment would fail, they'd send it back and we'd have to repair it, and that was an incentive for fantastic design. There were a lot of people involved in that.
Was that the 618T?
No, that was AR and AR. No, here. ARN 18, I believe, and ARN.
What was, can you recall, what are some of the highlights, some of the jobs you may have enjoyed the most throughout your career at Rockwell?
One I haven't talked about yet was countermeasures. After the war, we got into countermeasures as passive receivers that would be wideband. Started out covering 1,000 to 10,000 megacycles in 4 different RF heads. And subsequently,
Go ahead.
well, later on they expanded it from that range of frequencies to go from 100 to 1,000 megacycles in 4 more heads. So there were 8 RF heads, and it covered the 1,000 to 10,000 megacycle range. What this is a passive receiver that was panoramic, would scan and look for radar, and then determine what, from the pulse shape and repetition frequency, what the characteristics of the enemy radar were. And this was started out as the AN-BLR-1, which was designed for submarines, and then later got on board ship and surface vessels. And then the expansion was the SLR-2 was the shipboard version, and the combined one then was universally applied to surface ships and submarines.
I know Rockwell, Rockwell Collins Radio was designing and manufacturing a lot of different products. Was there always a lot of competition from other companies making these same products, or?
Oh, absolutely. We never were handed a contract on a plate. It was always competitive bidding. And on the countermeasures field, L'Oreal Electronics was one of our big competitors. General Dynamics was too. We didn't get those handed on a plate.
Any other major projects or highlights in your life that you're?
Oh, there was another ARN 118, which was a UHF transceiver for commercial airline or for military.
What do you think one of the biggest money makers were?
The TACAN.
TACAN?
One of the fellows within the last couple of years had made a study of it, and I think there was $380 million worth sold over the life of it.
That was probably used on commercial as well as aviation, or?
No, that's still government.
Government, strictly government?
There's a difference between the government and the civil air navigation.
Mm-hmm.
Civil is a VOR, ILS.
Is there any other folks besides the ones we talked about that stuck out in your life, that you have any stories to tell, or?
Oh, Frank Davis was the chief engineer during
Davis?
Frank Davis,
Davis?
yes. He passed away very shortly during the war. Bob Cox took over in that, and he's influenced my life quite a bit. Mm-hmm. We still know each other. He lives in Kansas City now, but we still communicate, get together.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever stop to think in the last 10 years of how the computer would have affected your work?
No, I'm still amazed with the computer. It's awesome what they can do.
And now there's no drawing boards anymore. The draftsmen have no drawing boards. It's all
designed by the computer-aided design, CAD.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different world.
Yeah. In your opinion, what happened in the early 70s when business took a downturn for Collins?
Oh, I don't know.
Was it the end of the space program and we were left hanging?
Oh no, the space program wasn't the biggest program at Collins. I really don't know I have no opinion what the downturn
Did you get caught up in it?
No, I survived, but quite a few of my friends didn't.
Mm-hmm. What was the last position you held out there? The
program manager.
Program manager.
The ARN 119. I've forgotten the type number now. ARC 186, ARC 186. That was it.
Mm-hmm. Carl, unless you have something else that pops into your mind, we'll draw this to a close. How many years? When did you retire from Rockwell Collins? Now
I worked for Collins from 1940 to 1981. Retired in the last month of my 65th year. It was September of 1981. Gosh, that's 20 years ago.
Yes, it is. If you had to do it over again, Carl, would you have done anything different with your life?
I loved what I did.
You're perfectly happy.
Everything was fine.
Do you have a photograph of your wife, maybe in your younger years?
And right here.
Do you have any idea maybe what year that would have been taken
It was
in?
1975.
1975?
Yeah.
Can you get that, Alan?
I got it. You bet.
So after you retired, what was your interest at that time?
Travel.
Travel?
Yeah, we enjoyed traveling and really splurged after I retired. And, well, our first trip was up to the Pacific Northwest and had a great time there. But our traveling companions had a trip around the world planned, and we went halfway around with them and came back and saw the Orient for the first time. But we've been to Europe a dozen times, Mexico a dozen times, and
What was your
Caribbean was one of our favorites.
favorite?
We were there for a dozen times too.
Did you try to go back in the wintertime, the Caribbean, or what
no.
time of the year did you go?
We went, I think it was March and April, at the end of the winter season. It was a little easier to get around.
Yeah, you never had a desire to move to Arizona during the winter months or Florida?
No. We visited Sun City and decided against it.
Mhm. Well, Carl, unless you have something else you want to talk about, the History Center, the Linn County Historical Society wants to thank you very much for sharing your memories with us.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do you have a VCR? We'll give you a